Hey there, zombie flesh eaters. Dead of the Brain 2 is a direct sequel to Dead of the Brain, and as a result, has many returning characters and concepts. If you're coming into this one unfamiliar with the first game, I have a video going over it in full here, which you might want to watch first. I bet this queue isn't even going to work if you're watching this in 10 years. They probably changed their whole system again. In November of 1993, a year and a half after Dead of the Brain and a scant 7 months after Marine Philt, Ides and Fairy Tale released Dead of the Brain 2, referred to by its own intro as the 7th and final chapter of Dead of the Brain. What is this, Xenogears? Well, regardless, Dead of the Brain 2 would be the third and final entry in the Nightmare collection. Released exclusively to the PC-98 until the 1999 Dead of the Brain collection for the PC Engine, Dead of the Brain 2 underwent a noticeable aesthetic shift from its predecessor. Writer Nakai Shinya and his Rush team returned, but artists Makino Ryuichi and Tomboy did not, issuing the colorful OVA style in favor of a darker, Western comics-influenced look in which everything is bathed in shades of blue. I've found it difficult to pinpoint a singular character designer. The attributed artist is Studio Art 2, who appears to be a pseudonymous individual who served as colorist for Naomi, Bishoujo no Yakata, and Kisaragi Shinobu, who handled CG and CG supervision for virtually all Fairy Tale titles up until the mid-2000s. It's quite possible that one or both of these artists handled character designs this time. There's very little sprite work here, and often characters are drawn directly as part of an environmental image. Notably, that means there's also virtually no animation this time around. No lip flaps, very little oozing blood. Things tend to look a little muddy, but that's not to say that there isn't some really nice pixel work, especially whenever an android is involved. Surprisingly, the zombies take a little bit of a back seat this time around. Instead, Dead of the Brain 2 focuses on the Bloody Fox, the chaotic evil motorcycle gang who lurked on the periphery of the first game. Our protagonist is still Cole, once a hapless doofus, transformed into a gun-toting, Eastwood-esque vigilante. There's a little bit of Gakuru Ishii influence here, particularly Burst City, but this Xerox depiction of the Reagan-era's obsession with urban violence makes Dead of the Brain 2 feel more akin to Streets of Fire or Death Wish than any of Romero's oeuvre.
They killed the Giggler, man.
The music reflects the change in tone. Much more high energy than the first game's horror movie-inspired score. There are some real bops in here. Dead of the Brain 2 has 4 credited composers, and we even have names for them this time. Saito Misako, Yoshito Hato, and Sato Akira primarily work on ADVs, all 3 contributing to several games by Fairy Tale parent Ides. Sato, notably, was also the composer for many of the Raiden games for my shmup-heads in chat. I'm sorry, I know so many of you hate that word. I'm willing to learn and grow. Shoot 'em up, shooter, STG, STI? Just tell me what to say. Our 4th composer is probably the most well-known. A very young Abo Takeshi, just barely out of college at the time, who went on to compose for the Infinity series, as well as all of the science adventure titles. Translation Circle Wine, who handled the fan patch for Dead of the Brain 1, initially stated that they weren't planning to translate the second game, due in part to its gargantuan amount of text, but surprised us all in October of 2025 by releasing a translation patch after all, a link to which you can find in the description. Indeed, Dead of the Brain 2 has double the amount of text of the first game, and none of it is worth a damn. It's been 2 years since the events of Dead of the Brain, in which Richard Grease, aka Ghoul, aka Dick Grease, plans to bring about a zombie apocalypse was foiled by Cole, his girlfriend Sheila, and his one-night stand, Kathy. We open in a clandestine lab, where Ghoul, whose brain survived the lab explosion, is being reassembled by a deformed scientist seen in silhouette. He gives Ghoul an ultimatum. His mission is to kill Cole, or else suffer remote detonation of a bomb implanted within his cortex. With marching orders given, the scientist injects the android with reanimation serum. Cole and Sheila have understandably moved to a neighboring town. We open on the aftermath of the couple's engagement party with their friends Lynn and Terry. Remember Terry? Sheila's former suitor who went mad in a cell after 24 hours? He got better. Sheila has apparently become a little bit battle-hardened after the events of the first game, dressing a little more masculine and sitting backwards on a chair like a hip youth pastor, and Cole apologizes for making her handle all the cleaning after the party. Of course, he's the kind of guy who'd do that. The mood is a little bit cheeky from the jump, as Sheila will respond to things that Cole says in narration. You'll notice the on-screen verb HUD of the first game has been replaced by a simpler point-and-click interface, in which the corners of interactive hotspots are outlined. It makes sense. There was often only one verb available at any one time, but I can't help but feel a downgrade in visual identity with their absence. Well, there is still a move button for when you need to move. Sheila heads out on a late-night convenience store run, but she's barely out the door before we hear her scream. Terry and Lynn have been brutally murdered in our outside stairwell. Terry suspended upside down with his brains leaking out, and Lynn has to be posed so the player can get an eyeful of her shapely bare thighs, maintaining the seedy tone fairy tale is known for. R.I.P. to Cole's only friends, we hardly knew you. As we investigate, Cole suspects there may have been multiple killers, as both were killed instantaneously without the chance to yell for help. The crime scene is spattered with a neon purple liquid which Cole recognizes as Cougar's reanimation serum, which leads him to hypothesize that the killers may be zombies, leaking fluid as they shamble about. This is just the first of many retcons. In the first game, the serum was described as a clear liquid, and in one of the most iconic scenes, in which Cougar's vial shatters all over Stephen King's grave, it's depicted resembling stylized water. Neon purple is certainly easier to visually read in a chaotic crime scene, but there's also not an instance of a zombie leaking the fluid either, so it feels like Rush Team were maybe in a little bit of a rush to connect the dots here. Sheila fetches Cole's gun, and he heads out onto the mean streets of Anytown, USA to do some investigating of his own. I really like Main Street. Its bright lights, colors, and shading make it look like the background in an SNK fighter. Look at this Burge sign. The desperate music is really nice, too. Soon we hear the sound of motorcycles revving, and immediately we see some biker goons terrorizing a woman. The bloody fox are still a concern, even as far as the next town over. Cole, ever the scumbag, thinks to himself about how he doesn't want to get involved, while commenting on the woman's babely figure. It's not until he spies the neon purple fluid dripping from one of the biker's hogs, before he pulls out his piece and does his best Dirty Harry impression. We manage to intimidate them enough to reveal that they probably ran over a puddle of serum in their new hideout, the now abandoned Bayside Research Lab from the climax of the first game. When Cole arrives, the research lab is completely derelict, windows shattered, cracks running up the facade. He reminisces about the fight with Ghoul 2 years prior. A lot. In fact, the reason why there's so much text in this game is because Cole will often recount the events of the first game, occasionally at great length. But as we head inside, we're basically in the abandoned factory from the opening of Snatcher. Look, I know, sci-fi horror adventure games, it's an easy comparison to make, but it's real close for comfort here. You be the judge. Cole stumbles upon what appears to be the blasted remains of Ghoul's android body, but his investigation is interrupted by a scream. Around the corner, a topless woman is being assaulted by 3 bloody fox thugs, one wielding a hypodermic needle. These guys ain't afraid of Cole's gun, so we have our first action scene. These work much the same way as they did in the first game. A timer begins counting down, and it's up to you to click on the right hotspot, lest you have to try again from the start of the sequence. None of these sequences offer much visual feedback on how to succeed, but there's so few hotspots, and such a slight penalty for failure, that each tends to be little more than a speed bump. In this case, we have to block this guy's fist before punching him out, but no matter what, the second guy knocks us out with an iron bar. As Cole fades in and out of consciousness, we hear the bikers speculating if Cole's a cop and mentioning purple sky. Yeah, okay, whatever. Snatcher used Liquid Sky for its fantasy drug, so we'll just call it Purple Sky here. Fairy Tail could have tried a little bit harder with this one. Personally, I would have gone with Purple Rain. When Cole finally comes to, the gang is gone. The woman's gone too, and neither Cole nor the game spare thought for what could have happened to her. But what is here is a matchbook for Bar Reese. Back at the apartment, Cole fills Sheila in, speculating with zero evidence that Purple Sky is a watered-down derivative of the original serum. The pair worry that the serum is being used recreationally. As we know from the first game, injecting the serum into someone who's still alive results not in zombification, but instead immortality. We might just have an undying gang of thugs on our hands. Sheila is familiar with Bar Reese, and shows Cole a newspaper article about a bloody fox who went berserk in the bar, killing 7 of his friends before 20 cops shot him to death. Dead of the Brain likes to deal in extremes. With this being our only lead, and a pretty good one, Cole heads out once again. Bar Reese is a seedy hole in the wall covered in obscene graffiti. A mohawked punk squats outside smoking, and a line of bikes are parked off to the side. The Fox are obviously here tonight. Inside, gang members flirt in the shadows of a booth, and a regular with slick back hair is smoking at the bar. He doesn't look like a biker from behind. In fact, he kinda looks like Geese Howard.
Impossible!
The bartender, a portly guy with a silver buzz cut, won't give us the time of day, and neither will the smoking guy. Eventually, the bartender tells us to go hassle the guys in the booth, probably hoping that the trash will take itself out one way or another. The table is occupied by 4 guys and 1 gal, with drug paraphernalia spread all over the table, including a shattered syringe floating in a puddle of murky purple liquid. I bet the artists were really excited to draw this scene. Regardless, we've found our guys. Big boy in the middle is the leader, a lunkhead named Briar. He's slipping hits of reanimation serum to his punk girlfriend. Things quickly get out of hand. 2 goons stand up brandishing chains and pipes, and Cole shoots one right between the eyes. Damn, Cole, you're just gonna perform a public execution in front of all these people? But he immediately drops his gun like a doofus, and just as we're about to get our just desserts, the clean-cut man at the bar calls for them to stop. He's the spitting image of Ghoul. We could basically tell this even seeing him from behind.
Predictable!
Despite Cole murdering their friend, the gang listens to the man and they ease off. But Cole aggressively confronts the man, who insists he's not Ghoul, but in fact a completely different guy named Steve. Taking Steve at his word, Cole's invited into the passenger seat of his convertible to continue their conversation at a 3rd location. Smart. Steve tells us he's actually a senior detective at Precinct 32, which is twice as much processing power as Ghoul's Precinct 16. The 2 men are actually associates, but as far as Steve knows, Ghoul just up and disappeared one day without a trace. Now, you may think you know where this plot is going, and you probably think it's someplace incredibly stupid. Yes. Anyway, when the 2 detectives lost contact, Steve drove down to Precinct 16 to find Ghoul, only to find piles of corpses and dismembered limbs moving on their own. He decided to not tell anybody back home because he was afraid they wouldn't believe him. Steve takes us to his apartment, where he starts smoking and drinking immediately. He tells us he investigated the explosion at the research lab, finding Ghoul's badge. He also found something else. Something large and wrapped in newspaper. He asks us to guess what it is. Ooh, this seems bad. Inside is what can only be Ghoul's robotic head. Steve also somehow knows this to be true. Notably, the hatch on the back is open, revealing an empty cavity. No brain. The interior stained with neon purple liquid. Steve knows this to be Purple Sky because he was apparently working undercover at Bar Reese. And doing a pretty terrible job of it too, since all the Fox seemed to know exactly who he was. It's after all this that Steve tells us his surname is also Grease. Ghoul, Dick Grease, is his twin brother. Cole, ever the genius, decides to spill the beans on absolutely everything that happened, with Dr. Cougar, the reanimation serum, the zombies, even all about Sheila.
Idiot!
In fact, Cole recounts the entire plot of Dead of the Brain 1 to Steve, as if he needs to meet a word count on an essay. Look at Steve's face as Cole tells him his dead brother was a monster. During this recap, Cole adds that Cougar's serum contains embalming fluid to stop the bodies from decomposing, which directly contradicts the presence of rotting zombies in both of these games. Steve suspects there's a mastermind using the Bloody Fox to spread the reanimation serum, and he and Cole agree to share information with each other to solve the case. And with that, we get a cool late title card. This might be the most animation in this game. Cole finally heads back home to find his apartment empty, with a note from Sheila saying she's gone searching for us, and to wait at home until she gets back. Sensing trouble, Cole returns to Bar Reese. And boy, is there trouble! Sheila's completely naked, restrained by two Bloody Fox thugs as they inject purple sky right into her neck. This is some pretty gruesome stuff, I gotta say. We get another poorly telegraphed action scene and run to Sheila's aid. Breasting boobily in Cole's arms, she knows she's been injected with the serum and accepts there's no changing that. Cole reassures her as he takes her back to her apartment. The next morning, Cole tries to check in on Sheila, but she doesn't answer the phone. So instead, he heads out to meet his new boyfriend Steve at Precinct 32. Man, this doesn't look nearly as good as Precinct 16. A cop outside tells us that Steve is the police chief. Alright. Identical twin police chiefs of neighboring towns, keeping it in the family. Inside, Steve is at his desk. Doesn't his phone look like a pair of nunchucks? I wish they were. The light streaming in through the closed Venetian blinds looks a little noir chic, but there also seems to be some kind of plastic sheeting taped to the wall in patches. Steve claims a junkie perp went wild and punched holes in the wall. If I'm being charitable, this suggests there's more super-powered berserkers like the one who tore up Bar Reese out there, but in terms of text, this never comes up again. Cole fills in Steve that Sheila was captured and injected, and Steve starts talking about tripping on weed. What a cop. Steve sure seems to know a lot about Purple Sky, revealing that it's a 50-50 blend of reanimation serum and pure heroin. For heroin users, these guys sure move around a lot. We get this great pseudoscience explanation of how the serum reanimates the heroin, which keeps it circling around the bloodstream like a superdose. This might not be the stupidest thing in the story, but it is up there. But Steve has more scary news in store for us. But first, we have to head over to the Pirin Research Lab to meet his friend, Dr. Lyle. Lyle spelled like Isle with an L at the front. I don't know about you, but Pirin Research Lab sounds a lot like Bayside Research Lab to me. But inside, it's just desperate music all day long. Dr. Lyle kind of looks like Steve with sloppy hair and glasses. Lyle is a really weird guy, offering unprompted that he has the resources to create new drugs that would leave no trace on a drug test. If we look around, we can see that there's a suspicious locked door leading to a private lab behind him. Lyle claims that Cougar was his mentor. Small world, but more importantly, we learn Cougar wasn't his last name, but his first. His full name is Cougar Hamilton. Oh boy! Lyle claims it ate him up how much smarter Cougar was than him. Alright, what do we think, gang? Are these two knuckleheads behind everything? Lyle gives us some more pseudoscientific babble about how Sheila's probably going to die, and Cole needs to bring her to the lab right away so Lyle can run some tests. Cole heads over to Sheila's to finally check on his ailing girlfriend because the guy he just met told him to. Oh, check out Sheila's building. Modern and fancy high-rise, much nicer than Cole's little fire escape alley, with a gorgeous view of the Lark Cigarettes billboard. Rich girl, huh? We take the lift up to Sheila's floor, where we pass a ball head in the hall. He smells strongly of disinfectant and appears to be coming from Sheila's apartment, door left wide open. Cole doesn't think anything of it, but you and I aren't Cole. The place is a shambles. Broken furniture and lamps. Closets and drawers emptied all over the floor. Completely ransacked, and Sheila herself nowhere to be found. We call Steve to report in. He'll send a team. Meanwhile, Cole plans to track down Sheila's friend Catherine, who is definitely not Kathy from the first game. Apparently, she's a waitress at a family restaurant called Shuffle Food. Hey, wasn't Kathy a waitress too? Oh, never mind. Shuffle Food, what a name. This is a Denny's kind of joint, and I love this Japanese-style duplex just behind the restaurant. It really looks like a location you'd find between Shinjuku and Takaranobaba, where there is, in fact, a branch of Denny's. A 50s-style waitress comes out to greet us. Naturally, this is Catherine herself, and Cole, the absolute shit, immediately begins flirting with her. Notice how Sheila and Catherine have the same leitmotif, suggesting the two women occupy the same role in the story, or, at the very least, in Cole's head and pants. Once Cole picks his tongue up off the floor, he tells Catherine that Sheila's missing and asks if she's seen her. She hasn't, but she recommends we check out a discotheque called Club Xena. The place has a bit of a rep about it, known for illegal activity, but the dancing can't be beat. Cole arrives at Xena just as the sun begins to set, and holy guacamole, look at this place! Bars on the windows, dragon from the box of a Shanghai video game over the entryway, red curtain instead of a door. I can hear that PTP song from RoboCop now. What's not to like? Even Cole likes this. This club is going all out at 5 p.m. I kinda get it. The club I used to go to is now doing afternoons because the clientele is aged. Jesus Christ. Cole reminisces about how he and Terry used to go dancing till dawn every Saturday night. Well, Cole's Terry might be dead, but at least Terry Bogart's here.
Are you okay?
Oh, nobody tell him about our new best friend, Grease Howard. The guy in the sleeveless black ensemble holding up a pillar is the only person who will talk to us. He introduces himself as the Black Dragon of Xena's, and he's quite aware of Miss Sheila. He's a big-time fan and apparently a former suitor. He claims he saw her today and congratulated her on her engagement to the gambling addict.
The drunken gambler?
That's right, and who might you be?
So hang on. Sheila came here today? During the day? Day raving with the Black Dragon? With a body full of heroin and embalming fluid? Now, people contain multitudes, but this seems counter to just about everything that we know about Sheila. Plus, didn't Sheila and Cole move to this town together recently? That's an incredibly small amount of time to have a whole hidden Laura Palmer thing going. It actually makes her pretty interesting. The Black Dragon said that Sheila was different than usual. She's renowned for her dancing, but today she was all business, asking a lot of questions before taking off to some place called Light Dance Street. I guess sometimes a girl's just in the mood for a lighter dance. Cole heads home to find a package waiting for him, and inside is Sheila's engagement ring, covered in blood. Big box for a ring. A ransom note instructs Cole to come to Warehouse 3 on the wharf, alone. At the wharf, it's an ambush. Briar, his lady, and his goons are all out for revenge. One of them holds Cole down as the rest take turns punching him. Somehow, he manages to get the upper hand, holding one of the bikers at gunpoint, but it's not long before we get bonked on the noggin and knocked out. Briar's lady wakes us up by blowing sweet breath in Cole's face. This time, Briar says it's his turn to interrogate Cole, but in actuality, he just spills that his gang were holding Sheila hostage at Reese until Steve came and picked her up. But now it's Cole's turn for a dose of the good stuff. just as the lady advances on us with her syringe, another fox turns up, revving his hog like there's no tomorrow. Biker Paul Revere is here to sound the alarm that, you'll never guess what, there's a zombie outbreak all over town. Cole reacts to this news with resigned exasperation, and so do I. Finally, some zombies. Back on Main Street, it's a vision of the apocalypse. In such a short amount of time, the dead outnumber the living. Even Burge didn't survive. Here, we're introduced to a new gameplay element. Now that we're in the second half of the game, occasionally we have to answer a little quiz to check that we've been paying attention so far. In this case, Cole has to figure out where Sheila might be. We know she's with Steve, so he probably took her to Pirin so Dr. Lyle could treat her. The lights are off and the front door is locked up tight, so we head up the emergency stairs, where we're faced with copy protection. Hey kids, remember this? Well, probably not, and I don't blame you, but this was definitely a thing in the 80s and 90s.
Don't copy that, Floppy!
Sometimes they even came with physical decoder wheels and everything. But Dead of the Brain 2's copy protection isn't quite so exciting, just a page in the manual. Steve is waiting inside to greet us and confirms that Sheila's here and currently okay. We have a selection of 5 doors to choose from. Some are locked, some are mostly empty, and one contains an old calendar with G13 written on it. I'm not sure if that's a reference to another fairy tale game or what. It doesn't seem to come up in this story. We find Sheila chilling in a modest bedroom with its own ensuite. I guess for when the good doctor decides to stay overnight. And it's a pretty nice little apartment. Probably nicer than Cole's. Sheila's doing okay, all things considered. And despite getting dosed, she's been making some investigative inroads herself. A big old crate of purple sky was stamped with the name and address of Razavon Pharmaceuticals, located just off of Light Dance Street. One of the 5 doors leads back to the lab, so we probe Lyle and Steve about Razavon. Steve was involved in a raid on their building. They're a cover for a big-time heroin distribution outfit, so Steve heads back to the precinct to retrieve his files on the case. Lyle's taken Sheila's blood sample, but it hasn't been analyzed yet. He tells us we have free use of his station wagon if we need to go anywhere, and we can also sleep in an unoccupied room. Don't even think about sleeping with your fiancé, you dirty, dirty boy. But we check in with Sheila anyway, who's worried about Catherine, so Cole hops in Lyle's wood-paneled wagon and puts the pedal to the metal back to shuffle food. The outbreak sure happened fast for this fine family dining establishment to fall. When we arrive, Cole says he ran into 2 zombies on the way. Tell, don't show, I guess. Inside, the restaurant's a bloodbath, corpses hanging all over the booths. Notably, there's a couple of Bloody Fox members among the casualties. This doesn't really seem like their kind of place. We locate Catherine behind the counter, sobbing but unharmed, and drive her back to Pirin. The plot starts throwing everything at the wall here as Catherine explains the Bloody Fox goons were sent by her stepfather, Daniel White, who not only sexually assaulted her, but is also the director of Razavon Pharmaceuticals. Well, that's ghoulish and convenient. Lyle is immediately weird with Catherine, with the pointed question of, or is it Kathy? Which really seems like they're setting Lyle up here, huh? Steve is notably absent, and Sheila makes us take another quiz to make sure we've been paying attention. And then we're off to Precinct 32, desperately seeking Steve. Like everywhere else we've visited, the precinct is a shell of its former self. The place is trashed, surrounded by corpses. There's even one sticking out the front door. Inside, it's even worse than shuffle food. As we attempt to climb the stairs to Steve's office, 4 corpses get up. Low on ammo, we're chased upstairs where we have 60 seconds to find a weapon. This sequence is rough. There's a lot to click on, and you have to investigate multiple red herrings like desks, lockers, and chairs, perhaps even attempting to disassemble a chair, before the game allows you to retrieve a screwdriver from a toolbox. Then, you let the timer run out so the zombies arrive, and you have to stab the screwdriver into the zombie's left eye. It's pretty dirty pool, and I can't imagine it has any other purpose other than to add 5 or so minutes to the length. A second zombie shows up. The eyes worked the first time, so we give him another Mo Howard and toss him out the window, wrecking a police car in the process. The third and final zombie gets the jump on Cole, but our eyes are drawn to this mini handsaw behind his head. Well, you know what Chekhov said. If a plaster wall is being repaired in the first act, a handsaw better disembowel a zombie by the third. Nice splatter scene as we fade to black. Back at Pirin, Cole fills out the word count by recounting every gory act we just saw. I can't tell if Steve approves or not. Regardless, he shares his files on the Razavan heroin bust, particularly that the director at that time had the unlikely name of Aleste Cortant. Catherine's stepfather Daniel took over after Aleste's arrest, and seemingly continued heroin distribution without interference from Johnny Law. Catherine says Daniel lives out of state in Montana, but suspects he's in town to capture her. Steve goes to bed, and Lyle is conspicuously absent, which seems like a pretty good opportunity for us to sneak around and investigate his lab, but it's locked up tight. After failing to get some sleep, Cole and Catherine go up onto the roof, where she explains her complicated feelings about her genocidal sex pest stepdad. I guess this is supposed to portray Catherine as particularly divine for extending grace to the antagonist, but considering Daniel has only done evil, and extreme evil at that, it's unearned and pretty stupid. Then she spills that she knows he's at Razavan's office, but didn't tell us because she didn't want us to hurt him. I think we probably could have figured out he was there anyway. Catherine, like Kathy before her, starts putting the moves on Cole until they're interrupted by the sound of a car driving away. It's Steve, who's not asleep in his room at all. Not much you can do about that, so while Sheila sleeps, Cole bangs his fiancé's best friend right on the roof above her head. Well, that's our H scene fulfilled. It's interesting that in both of these games, Cole is only intimate with women who are not his romantic partner, and during times of great inconvenience to her. In the first game, when she's scavenging for food for him at great risk to herself, and now as she suffers from receiving a super duper dose of heroin mixed with zombie poison. It's honestly pretty depressing. The next day, which still appears to be night, the sound of gunshots ring out from Pirin's downstairs. The building has been breached, so Cole joins Steve to secure the exits and fight off not only zombies, but also this bloody fox who looks like he has a lipstick mark on his big bald head. We get the better of him, but apparently he's so dedicated to the cause of being a rowdy heroin-loving biker that he bites off his own tongue before we can question him. Notably, one of the zombies is hemorrhaging purple serum from the pores in her chest. Back upstairs, Sheila manages to get out of bed long enough to tell Cole she can feel her body changing, and she shows us that her chest is undergoing the same hemorrhage of serum as the zombie we saw downstairs. Boy, Cole, maybe you would have noticed sooner if you weren't fooling around on the roof. Lyle is back in his lab and says that Cougar, of all people, can help. He explains that he was out earlier because he was visiting the cemetery where Cougar's interned to find that his body and brain are still alive. Lyle demonstrates what he means with a jar containing a brain and a pair of eyes. This is Keith, the bloody fox with the kissy bald head who ambushed us downstairs. He immediately goes mad from learning he's a brain in a jar and farts out blood. Cole heads back to his room to make sense of what he just witnessed. Soon, Sheila visits, expressing sorrow and anxiety about her pending zombification and seeking comfort in her life partner. Cole, ever the paragon of virtue, fiancé of the year, yells at her and physically hits her in the face, causing her to apologize and leave. And it's with this vile act that we're asked to choose our ending: revive Cougar or let him rest. We'll start with the good ending, to revive Cougar. Steve and Cole head to Disbel's cemetery to find Doc's grave. Why is he buried in the town we moved to years later? Well, best not to think about that too much. We dig him up, which means Lyle dug him up, confirmed his vitals, and then reburied him. You're really asking me to not think about a lot here. Steve gets attacked by a zombie, and Cole uses a shovel to decapitate it. Kinda fun. We take Cougar back to the lab, where Lyle gets to work hooking his brain up to whatever jar talking device we need to communicate with him. Steve takes off in his car again, and we have to do another quiz, this time facilitated by Catherine, to determine he's probably at Razavon Pharmaceuticals to apprehend her stepdan. Or maybe just having a light dance. We arrive at Razavon under cover of night to see the lab station wagon parked outside, motor idling. Inside the building, this is hardly a pharmaceutical company, but rather a hospital of horrors. Filthy cages and slabs, bloodstains, corpses abound. One only need walk in the front door to see this place is up to no good, so I guess it's lucky nobody ever did that. We then change perspectives to see Steve tied up in a chair, while Daniel, face obscured by a monitor, holds him at machine gun point. He's gonna inject him with some super duper purple sky, which will kill him in 20 minutes. The machine gun would probably be faster, but I guess somewhat less thematically appropriate. Plus, it wouldn't give us the chance to save the day. Before he can give Steve the hot shot, he sees Cole on the monitor and makes his fatal mistake, opting to play with us rather than finish what he's started. Daniel gets the jump on us, and indeed, he's the bald guy who smelled like disinfectant we saw coming out of Sheila's apartment. He tells us Purple Sky was invented by somebody named Jill. A little bit late to be introducing new characters, isn't it? Anyway, Daniel chastises us for not asking Lyle about Jill, claiming his zombie army has laid waste to Parain without big boys Cole and Steve there to defend it. We get the requisite big villain monologue, and Daniel's doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems his master plan is to release zombies across the open ranges of Montana to run as free as the wild horses. He spends so much time babbling, and grotesquely, gloating over sexually assaulting his stepdaughter, that Steve managed to undo his bonds and sneaks up behind him, allowing us to plug him one. As Dan lies dying, he gloats once again that his death means nothing as long as Jill is still in the picture. But as we attempt to get more info out of him, Steve shoots him in the forehead, permanently silencing him. Cole asks Steve what the hell, and Steve says we need to leave right away because he's planted time bombs all over the building. Seeing as there's not actually a zombie threat within Razavon, it sure seems like an effort to get rid of any evidence. But we escape, to a black screen, no cool explosion like the first game, and head back to Parain. Tragically, Daniel was telling the truth. Parain has fallen. There's 2 corpses on the floor that look like Catherine and Lyle, but it's a fake out. They're just random zombies. Well, not for long anyway, because we go down the hall to find the bodies of both Catherine and Lyle anyway. Hardly seems worth it. That's quite a send-off to Catherine. Fortunately, Sheila's safe, having locked herself inside of Lyle's secret lab. Lyle filled her in on a mysterious substance called Gilgananrion, made by a scientist named Jill J. Gennaro. That must be our Jill, who coincidentally was the director of the Bayside Research Lab. Doesn't the full name sound like a King of Fighters antagonist? More importantly, before Lyle died, he managed to get Cougar's brain up and running. Here he is, floating in the jar, damaged from where he got munched by a zombie and then subsequently shot in the head by Cole. Cougar, being Cole's best friend and all, wants to catch up on what he's missed from being dead these past 2 years. I was surprised that Cole didn't lay out the entire story line by line, but maybe even Fairy Tale thought this would be too much. We describe Sheila's symptoms to Cougar, and he identifies the condition as DNV number 16. He's made an antidote, which was in his satchel that he dropped way back in the cemetery at the start of Dead of the Brain 1. Cougar apologizes for the outbreak one final time, and then his brain dies for good. So we head back to where it all began, while Steve stays behind to keep an eye on Sheila. Oh, now this looks familiar. Dark game, sexy cats, and of course, you. We can look at some tombstones for people like Stella Treschel, Seed Relic, Nalini Nanette, Jonathan Long, and Robert Gibson. A lot of these names are from fairy tale games of past and even future. Seed Relic is the protagonist of Marine Philt, and I believe Jonathan Long is the protagonist of Necronomicon, which wouldn't release for another year. Leave a comment if you can identify the others. The cemetery isn't very safe. Geographically, I mean. Just look at this sheer cliff. Not to mention the zombies. This is another confusing action sequence. If you shoot the zombie in the head, it kills you. You have to wait for the timer to run out, at which point Cole comments that it appears to be docile. After that, it attacks for real, and we have to shoot it in the head. This doesn't stop it, and it throttles us over the cliff, where we're faced with a bunch of options. The correct answer is to give up, at which point a bright light flashes, and the zombie goes flying over the cliff, landing on a conveniently positioned spiked fence. Wondering what that could have been, we retrace our steps to find footprints. Robo-footprints. Cole surmises the flash must have been a laser cannon, aimed to save us. We find Cougar's satchel, cure and all, right where he left it, at Stephen King's grave. There's also a notebook, but the game plays coy and won't let us look at it just yet. We take the notebook back to Steve, who hasn't cleaned up any of these bodies, to uncover it's the formula for the reanimation serum. But this is labeled Book 2 of 2, with a note stating, "Somebody stole Book 1, it was probably Jill. P.S. If you create a serum only using Book 1 and not Book 2, you'll make indestructible zombies." Oops! That's a lot of retconning of the first game to make this contrived plot work. It explains why we couldn't kill the zombie in the cemetery, but it doesn't explain why we could kill any of the others. Cole recounts the entirety of his brief encounter with the cemetery android to Steve. Cole believes it wasn't Ghoul, but a second good android. Okay. None of this tells us where Jill is, but fortunately the notebook clearly states Jill is at the Lasnu building, along with its address. It's a miracle. Before we go, we need to cure Sheila with Doc's antidote. Steve insists to be the one who penetrates with the needle because Cole can't even do this himself. I bet he'd give Catherine a shot. Sheila starts talking about being a burden yet again, regressing to her personality in Dead of the Brain 1, and we leave her in bed to recover. Here we are at the Lasnu building, the final dungeon. It's a lone skyscraper in a desolate land under the pounding rain. It's pretty funny that the base of operations for this wide-reaching zombie conspiracy is a dilapidated horror movie set with no electricity or running water, but that's Dead of the Brain for you. Inside, it looks like a dead mall. Somebody wrote on the wall again. We hear a feminine giggle coming from the floor above, and we find Bad B himself, along with his woman. Briar's been waiting here to settle the score with Cole, and the last of the Bloody Fox come out from the shadows to hold us at gunpoint, resulting in a standoff. Briar chides us for being bad at picking sides, but as I recall there was never a side to pick. The Bloody Fox had been trying to kill us from the jump. Somehow, Briar shoots his own man, Steve shoots Briar, and then we, as Cole, shoot the woman. I don't even think she got a name. With everybody dead, we head back downstairs to find a secret staircase leading to the basement. And who's here but Jill? And in case there was any doubt, Jill is a man. But not just any man. Jill is obviously the silhouetted scientist with the weird head from way back in the intro. His head is weird because Ghoul crushed it, but his body was full of serum, so he survived. He starts talking like a JRPG villain, considering himself a god who will rule over a planet of zombies who will kneel before him, pretty much the same as Ghoul and Daniel. None of these guys have an original idea, let alone one that makes any sense. A hatch on the wall opens like we're in a coliseum, and Jill brings out a tearful Catherine. She's alive! She walks over to Steve, begging for help, before tearing out his throat with her teeth, with a vicious grin. We shoot her in the face, and she instantly skeletonizes. Jill applauds Cole's cold-bloodedness, stating Catherine wasn't zombified and was acting of her own free will, and yet we killed her anyway. And that's about the last we hear of that, because the game isn't interested in exploring what Jill means by that, or why Catherine would attack Steve like a rabid dog, or really why anybody does anything in this game. But Catherine was just the warm-up act. Here comes Ghoul, the postmodern Prometheus himself. Huh, what do you know? I was certain that Steve was going to end up being Ghoul, playing the long game to get revenge on stupid Cole. But indeed, they really were twins. Identical twin police chiefs of neighboring towns, one good, one evil. It was Ghoul who saved us in the cemetery, but he wasn't saving us. He was just there to kill the invincible zombie we were fighting because it went AWOL or something. Ghoul didn't kill us there, despite it being his mission, because Jill couldn't make it to the cemetery that day, and he likes to watch. Such hubris will be his downfall. Ghoul blasts Cole in the shoulder with his laser, just like the first game, but then he hesitates and refuses to kill Cole. As Jill stamps his feet over Ghoul's disobedience, Steve puts a hand on his brother's titanium shoulder, appealing to his humanity. In return, Ghoul turns around and shoots his twin right through the heart with his super laser. Ghoul then asks Cole to bury Steve for him. Turns out there was a bit of humanity left in him after all, killing his brother so he wouldn't zombify. He then grabs Jill and bisects him, the bomb in his brain exploding at the same time, so the two die together. But wait! Jill is still full of serum and survives his bisection, springing up from the ground on his intestines to grab Cole from behind. So we inject him in his eyeball, and he instantly skeletonizes too. We intend to keep our promise to Ghoul, giving Steve a proper burial, and burning Jill's notebook, so this won't happen again. Cue the credits. Co-directed by 3 Beers and Lawyers in Love. And special thanks to you, of course. And then we get our post-credits stinger. A beaten and burned Cole emerges from the Lasnu building to find the rain has stopped and the sun is shining. Sheila's come to greet us, but is conspicuously facing away from us. She turns around, smiling brightly, fully healed. She then asks Cole to tell her everything that happened, and the screen wipes to the IDES logo. Gosh, for a second there I really thought he was going to recount the whole thing. The end. But that's not the end, because there's also the bad ending route. Now, this is actually going to be pretty quick, as there's very little divergence here. Steve and Lyle respect Cole's decision to let his best friend rest in peace, and we get this scene where Sheila's standing alone on the roof, looking out onto the horizon, contemplating her inevitable death, and blaming herself for the physical and emotional abuse she suffered at Cole's hands. Meanwhile, Cole is busy hugging Catherine goodbye in her room. It is one of the bleakest things in this very bleak game. The multiple cemetery trips to get Cougar's body and satchel are omitted, though the events at Razavon and Lasnu play out exactly the same. The only other difference is the stinger, where Sheila turns around to reveal she's a zombie! Oh no! Considering the fake-out and the good ending, it almost feels like this final scene of horror was the ending they started with. Well, it's the ending that Cole deserves anyway. I probably don't have to tell you, I really didn't like Dead of the Brain 2. This is a deeply depressing and deeply stupid story about a city full of sex crimes and a police force who are either powerless or unwilling to stop them. Now, that last part isn't unbelievable, but it plays into a reactionary power fantasy where hard men like Cole need to take matters into their own hands and met out extrajudicial killings with no hesitation. Personally, I think Cole is one of the bigger villains of the Dead of the Brain duo, drifting through life driven by hedonism, spending his days gambling, neglecting his fiancée, and banging any woman who gives him the time of day. Soon, he's wading into biker bars to shoot the clientele in the face, and as he recounts his encounter at the police station with Steve, seems to delight in violently killing zombies, his former neighbors and friends, who he describes as freaks. There is very little humanity to be found in Dead of the Brain 2. There's a lot of missed opportunity here. Don't get me wrong, it would have been really stupid if Steve, or even Lyle, turned out to be Ghoul, but the two are clearly being set up as the villains of the piece, especially during the scene in which Steve executes Daniel to keep him quiet. I'm all for a misdirect and a red herring, but this is way too much sauce to splash on a character who turns out to be a straight-up lawful good guy with no flaws, no secrets, and, honestly, not very much personality. How did he become so friendly with the Bloody Fox anyway? Well, I guess we'll never know. I'm most frustrated at these glimpses of Sheila's secret life, one that Cole is unaware of, but is aware of Cole. Late-night dalliances with the city's underworld, multiple criminals vying for her love, her knack for investigating the shady side of the city. Ultimately, none of this really amounts to anything, and frankly, it's probably a good thing. I don't think these writers could have handled this topic in a way that wouldn't have been insensitive, to say the least. But that's Dead of the Brain 2, closing the book on the 7th and final chapter of Dead of the Brain. Shout out to Wine for their efforts on the translation patch. They did a really good job. And shout out to all of you for sticking with me this far yet again. I need to give a very special shout out to my supporters. Thank you so much, Chili J, Like a Milk Dud, and VCal13. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to become a supporter yourself, you can click the join button below the video, and for less than a cup of coffee, you can get access to early video releases and special updates. But whether you've joined or not, you are all the greatest. Without your interest and support, I really wouldn't be doing this, and I'm so grateful to have all of you along for the ride. Coming up next, we return to close the book on another PC Engine saga. Stay tuned. I'm most frustrated of all.
You loser.